Hi, my name's Keith Sillar. I'm a professor of neuroscience at the University of St Andrews, and my research interests are in how the nervous system controls movements in animals and humans. That's a great question, and there's really no simple answer. We tend to think of frogs as having smooth or slimy skin with really powerful back legs that they use for jumping or swimming. On the other hand, we think of toads as having shorter, stubbier legs that are used for walking more than leaping. And in our local ponds, the frogs lay large clumps of eggs, while the toads lay their eggs in long strings. But in other species, these differences are much less obvious. For example, the South African clawed toad, or frog, is also called Xenopus laevis, which means slippery animal with funny feet. And we study these in St Andrews. Xenopus has smooth skin and it swims using a breaststroke, and it lays its eggs one at a time on the surface of vegetation in the pond. So there the distinction is less clear. Metamorphosis is the change in body form from tadpole to frog. It's a really amazing transformation in which almost everything changes. The limbs grow, the tail disappears, the gills are absorbed, and the animal develops lungs just like us. The whole process happens while the tadpole is still swimming around in its environment. This is unlike metamorphosis in, for example, caterpillars when they turn into butterflies within their chrysalis. Remarkably, metamorphosis is controlled by simple hormones secreted by the thyroid gland, the same hormones released by the thyroid gland in humans. Many don't, but some do, and it really depends on their diet. Some frogs are carnivorous, that means that they eat meat, and they have teeth, but don't worry, they don't eat humans. In fact, the teeth are more to hold on to their prey rather than to tear the flesh. Yes, they certainly can. They have an eardrum, also called a tympanum, and their inner ears are really very similar to ours in the way that they detect sound, only they don't have the flappy bits of skin called ears that we use to collect the sound. One reason they need to hear is because they communicate with each other by calling or singing, and this is especially the case in the spring when they serenade each other with very complex sequences of songs. You might have heard them croaking in the spring. First, the female frogs sing to attract the males, and then the males respond by singing back. In Xenopus frogs, which we have here in St Andrews, they sing quite a lot, and there's much known about how they do so. In fact, one of the female songs is called rapping. Like us, frogs are vertebrate animals, which means that like us, they have a bony internal skeleton, the vertebral column, and this surrounds and protects the spinal cord. The spinal cord contains all of the nerve cells needed to detect sensations like touch, but also to communicate with the muscles to help us move around. So we actually share a lot in common with frogs. We both use lungs to breathe, muscles to operate our jointed skeletons, and we've really got very similar internal organs such as the heart, and as I mentioned before, the thyroid gland that controls development. In fact, genetically speaking, we're very similar indeed, with many genes, possibly as much as 80%, are similar between the two species. Yes, indeed we can. This is particularly because of the similarities in our anatomy and also in our genetics. In fact, there are about 1,700 genes that are associated with human diseases that are also present in frogs. One of the most fruitful areas for using frogs to study what might happen in human disease relates to abnormalities in development, such as spina bifida. In fact, most of what we know about early development in humans came originally from studies on amphibians.
Relatively level-headed, not terribly excitable, not terribly depressive.